Hello everybody and welcome back to Teacups and Toadstools. I'm Caroline. If you're new, it's nice to have you joining us today. Today I have my Princess Anna mug, which I got when the first Frozen movie came out at the Disney store, and I used to have a matching Elsa mug, but my roommate freshman year, her cat, broke it unfortunately, but she did get me a new mug, which will be featured later, so I'll show that to you. But anyway, I'm really excited for this video today because I wanted to wrap out the year with another reading video, but I wasn't sure if I wanted it to be a books I read this year that I really liked video or books I didn't like this year. And then I was thinking and remembering that this is the end of a decade. This year marks the end of a decade, and I realized that in this decade I've been in elementary school, middle school, high school, and a little bit of college. So what I'll be doing is I'll be counting down the books from the 2010 all the way to 2019 and tell you the book that was the most important to me that year. They might not necessarily have been my favorite that I read that year, but it was one that I remember had a really big impact on my life. So with that, let's get going. Alright, the book for 2010 is actually my all-time favorite book of all time. Wow, I really just said that sentence. Okay, right, so my book for 2010 is actually my favorite book of all time, and this is the year that I discovered it. And it goes without saying, it's Anne of Green Gables. This is a reason why my hair is still red. I have always wanted red hair because of this book, and she has inspired me, and so here we are. And yeah, so this book, if you haven't read it or seen any of the TV specials, this book is about a girl named Anne who's an orphan who gets adopted by a brother and sister, and it's kind of just about her life and her growing up. And I really love that there are multiple books in this series and it grows up with her, and so it was fun to read through her journey as I grew up. But this is still my favorite, the very first one. It's a classic, and I would recommend if you're looking to watch a television version of it, check out the Megan Follows version. It was PBS, I think it was 1987. That's my favorite version. I have it on DVD, it's awesome. But yes, this is my 2010 book, very important. I think it goes without saying, I was an imaginative kid. That's kind of why I'm doing theater now, and this book was so inspiring to me during that time. Okay, so this next book was when I was 12, so it's 2011, and this is probably going to be on the list of a lot of people who are around my age at this time because it just is a fantastic book and a lot of us grew up reading it. I actually read this one. It's not Harry Potter. I read it before Harry Potter, and I'll get to why once we get a little later in this video because Harry Potter might be coming up. But this is what I read first, and it was the Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief, and that whole series, specifically the first 5 books. The other ones I've read, they're good, but this series was very formative to me. And this was the inspiration of a lot of my imaginings and a lot of the stories that I was writing at that time. This book is still a classic. If you are any age and haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. It is so fun. I just really liked the idea of kids taking on very adult tasks because I was a pretty mature kid and I liked reading about kids who were capable of what I was capable of. And yeah, this book is just a great book. I would recommend it. There's not much else to say. Every book I'm gonna be like, this is an awesome book and this is how it inspired me, but this is, I mean, yeah. Great. Fantastic. Okay, here we go. We're ready. We were all waiting for this one to come. It's Harry Potter. I'm gonna just count the whole series. This is the only one I grabbed off the shelf, but this is probably my favorite book too in the whole series. But Harry Potter goes without saying. I was a little bit of a late bloomer when it comes to Harry Potter. I read it when I was 13, which is a lot later than I know a lot of my friends did, and I can't tell you why that ended up happening. I don't know. I just never read it until middle school, and I was so obsessed with it that I started a Harry Potter club at my middle school with my friend Maria. Shout out to Maria. If she's watching this, she's probably not, but anyway, this is one of my faves, obviously. Just so we have a little conversation, I'm a Ravenclaw, so comment below if you're a Ravenclaw. Woo! And yeah, my favorite character is Hermione. I love Hermione, and also Luna. But anyway, Harry Potter, classic. But it was important to me in middle school, which I think is a little bit different. Sometimes I feel like people read it earlier. So anyway, love it. Alright, so we're getting into some more specific books, not necessarily the big series anymore. So this book is the book that I think marks my 8th grade when I was around 14. It was the first book that I cried when I read, and I remember I think I was in like chorus or something, and I was reading it because we had a free day, and I just was sobbing, and my friends were all like, what is happening right now? But I think it was just the first time I had ever really been moved to tears by words, and I think that's a really big deal. The book, actually, you probably have read it, but it's The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. This book just brought me to tears, and it made me love historical fiction. This is kind of the book that got me into it, and what kind of inspired me reading like books now that are World War II based. But I will say the use of the narration in this book is so incredibly unique, and I just absolutely love it. I always recommend this book at my bookstore to people who haven't read it, and I always recommend I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak, which is also another really good book, just while we're talking about it. Alright, so we're at 2014 now, and I was just starting high school at this point, and I was a little tired of reading juvenile fantasy books, and I wanted something a little bit more adult, I guess. And so the book I decided to pick up is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I love this book. It was kind of the first book that I read that really had me in a sense of wonder. Like the world was so mystical, but it all made sense, and I didn't feel like there was a lack of information. I really just loved this book, and it really inspires a lot of how I write today, because I also love to write, and it's kind of like everything, even the ordinary, is fantastical in this book, which I absolutely love. I can't say a lot more than that. I just will say if you haven't read this book, you should just pick it up and start it, because it is gun-ho right off the bat. You can't put it down. I absolutely love this novel. Okay, so I actually don't have the physical book of this book because it's at school, but I have the book jacket because for whatever reason that's still here. Oh yeah, also, I don't think I've acknowledged this. This is my room at home. I'm home for Christmas break, and so we're filming on what looks like a green screen, but it's actually my wall because I was obsessed with lime green as a child, so here we are. So my book for 2015 is Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fannie Flagg. This is a classic, and I had watched the movie a million times before I read the book. My mom had introduced it to me. It was on TV during a skiing trip, and she was like, oh, I love this movie. And so we watched it together. The thing that I really enjoyed about this book and thought it was unique with having a movie adaptation is I think the movie is so good, and they did a really good job adapting it for the screen because they didn't copy everything out of the book. In fact, there's a lot of things in the book that aren't at all in the movie, but it feels like the book is almost a supplement to watching the movie, and it makes you enjoy the movie more, knowing more information, but the movie is still enjoyable on its own. This book, I think, inspired me just with how heartwarming it is and just how much people are loved in this novel and how much people love each other, and I think that there's not a lot of that in a lot of media nowadays, and so I think this story talks a lot about that. I love Iggy and Ruth. They're great, and they're together, they're amazing. That's all I'm gonna say about that. So I always recommend this book if anyone hasn't read it. It's just a great, great, great novel. Alright, so the next book on this list is the only nonfiction book, and it's an autobiography, and it is Home by Julie Andrews, not to be mixed up with Homework, which is her newest book, which is about her Hollywood years, which I would definitely recommend. I read that this year, it's awesome. But it's actually about her life before Hollywood and when she was growing up. And I really enjoy this book because it really talks about a young child and teenager growing up in the artistic industry. And as someone who is an aspiring actor, it was just very interesting to read how she got to where she is. And so it talks about a lot of her time on Broadway as well, a little bit at the end. And I actually, like, call me silly, I didn't know she had done so much straight theater before she went to Hollywood, but in fact that was all she did before she went to Hollywood. And Mary Poppins was her first movie, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, but it was a really good read, and I also have to say a lot of autobiographies aren't well written sometimes, in my opinion. I'm sorry. But I think that she is a really, really great writer, and it illustrates her life so well. So anyway, would definitely recommend if you haven't picked it up. Alright, so the book for 2017, for when I was 18 years old, which was the year that I graduated high school and the year I started college, just for context. And this book was hard to pick because I read a lot of books this year that really were inspiring and informative for me, but I think the book that inspired me most as both an artist and a person is The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. And though I personally cannot relate to the first generation American experience, I really love how this book alternates between different characters but still forms a general similar arc. It's not hard to follow. You feel sympathy and you feel like you know all the characters by the end of the novel, which I really love. And I love a good mother-daughter story. This is why I like Brave, and I really love just the differences between the generations and the problems that they struggled with. So this is just, it was a good book and one that I think has inspired the way that I've personally started to become a writer. So, alright, so the next book on this list, I think I read between the summer of freshman and sophomore year, and this book is probably a little lesser known than the other books on this list, but it is so fantastic. It's called When the Moon Was Ours by Anne Marie, I always say Macklemore, Micklemore, something like that. But this novel is beautiful, and I'll talk about the plot a little bit since it might be a little less familiar to some of you. This book follows two friends named Mael and Sam, and they have been friends since childhood, and they have a sort of relationship that almost goes beyond love. It's like even deeper, and it's very magical. And the world that they live in this book is a sort of mix between reality and some supernatural fantasy stuff, which is kind of cool. This novel has really shaped how I've started to write personally, and how I write fiction. And I love this book because it's very relationship based and it's very real. It doesn't really sugarcoat the hard stuff about relationships. It's very real, which I absolutely love. So this book is also LGBT, which I absolutely love, and I love the way that they weave it into the plot, where it becomes an important part of the plot, but it's not the entire plot. There's still an overarching bad guy because it is a fantasy book. But yeah, I love this book. It's very heartwarming and very real and genuine, and I love it. Alright, so the book for 2019 is a book called Dennis Ever After, and this is a young reader's book by Tony Abbott, and it is a ghost story mystery, and it does the same thing that all these other books that I love have done, where it goes between flashback and present day, and I absolutely love it. And the premise of the book is there are two twins, and one of the twins has passed away when he was really young, and he comes back from the dead and tries to talk to his brother and figure out the mystery of how he died. And this book has served as inspiration for me in books that I'm currently writing. No spoilers, we'll see if those ever happen, but I really just love the story, and I think it's very refreshing to see a very adult idea through the eye of a child, and that is just something that I love. But yeah, so that book is probably my favorite that I read in 2019. Alright, hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Teacups and Toadstools today. I want to know if you've read any of these books. You've probably read a lot of them, hopefully. But if you haven't, definitely check them out, and let me know if you've read any of the weirder books on this list. I'm always curious to hear what your thoughts are on these novels. And subscribe to my channel, and please like this video. I'd really appreciate it. Look at my short stubby thumbs. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye!